Fellowship of the Great Physician welcomes you to House Call. Our hosts today are doctors of chiropractic, Dr. Gerald Lala and Dr. Richard Jensen, who is also a board-certified acupuncturist, practice independently in North Oaks, Minnesota. Let's join our hosts for today's program that will assist you in your quest for optimum health and well-being.
Welcome to House Call. I'm Dr. Gerald Lala, and this is Thomas Benarat. Tom is a personal injury attorney. That means that he specializes in malpractice cases as well as automobile collisions where people have been involved in automobile collisions and they need some legal representation, and that's what he specializes in. And as the screen says, our subject today is Fraud, Protecting Yourself, Part 2. If you missed Part 1, you can video stream this through your computer by either going to Mr. Benarat's website or our website. And there are a lot of other programs out there. Mr. Benarat has been very gracious to do a lot of programs on Minnesota No Fault, on the effects, acute effects of automobile accident injuries, as well as the late effects. And we've done some programs on risk management as well that all involve medical and chiropractic care. So if you're thinking about some health issues, if you've been involved in what you think might be a malpractice situation, or if you've been involved in an automobile collision and you're having some issues or some questions, you might want to look at those programs, or at least call Mr. Benarat. Don't call me because I'm not an attorney. You can call me about health issues. I might be able to offer some advice there, but I don't practice law and I would never want to do that. I'm not educated to do that. Well, we're doing Part 2 on fraud. In the previous program, we had just begun talking about examinations. So if you have been involved in an automobile collision and you go to a chiropractor, a physical therapist, a kinesiologist, a medical doctor, what should you be looking for? In the first program, we talked about examination procedures and things of that nature. And today we're going to talk a little bit about x-ray again, huh?
Right.
Excluding, if a woman, let's say, excluding women who are pregnant. If you receive a file or a client comes to you and says, I've been going to this physical therapist, this chiropractor, medical doctor, and you can see that they've had some serious issues, but say the chiropractor's treating them without x-rays, does that raise a red flag for you? Do you think that as an attorney that that's an important thing to consider?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. In fact,
Huge issue.
Yeah, and it goes as far as this. Aside from the health benefit that it provides, which is, that's fairly obvious. I think if you go someplace and they don't do x-rays, it's probably a pretty glaring sign you better get somewhere else, because the reason they probably didn't either is they don't have it in their office, and or they're maybe not experienced or thorough enough to do it. But in the long run, if the way an insurance company looks at it is this: when I'm going to crash, my two goals are to get better, and if I think I've got compensation coming, if I'm the injured person, to get compensation. Insurance companies will say, well, they couldn't have been hurt very bad, they didn't even get x-rays. I've heard that more than one time.
And the x-ray gives objective findings. It really rules in or rules out objective findings. A range of motion is a subjective finding, or if I have a headache, that's subjective. We don't disregard that, but the x-ray more than anything is going to prove or validate those subjective symptoms. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. If people went back and looked at the last tape we did where we had some of the x-rays where it showed the x-ray taken right away and compared to the x-ray a few months later or a period of time later, there's a demonstrative difference. In those cases, if I show a jury, if I have to try a case, here's what happened right after, here's where they are now. They clearly can see, no matter what I tell them. I might say my neck hurt really bad. They may or may not believe me, but if they can see it in the picture, it's easy then. Without it, it's very hard.
Now we're going to run a video about misuse of kinesiology here in a few minutes when they get that set up. So you see files from chiropractors, kinesiologists, other people that are using kinesiology as a treatment, and we know that it can have some validity to it, but do you think it has as much validity as an x-ray does, for example?
No, because there's too much, there's ambiguity. It's not an exact. An x-ray it's a still picture in time. The kinesiology, it varies from person to person. An x-ray is, depending on the quality of the image, if you're assuming you're using same imagery, it's going to be the same Obviously, you got to know how to shoot it, whether to have the, flexion, extension, mouth open, mouth closed, all those things. But, generally, it is what it is.
Do you think that we hear a lot about getting second opinions these days? What about if you go to see a chiropractic file, or we're talking to people now been involved in automobile accidents, and they, the chiropractor maybe did take some x-rays but never sent the films out for a second opinion. Does that raise a red flag to you? Or?
Yeah,
It does?
Well, you want to, it's always safer if you're the person doing it. I'm sure you feel this way. Let's have somebody that's an expert in it reread what I did. It's just like this. If you go to the emergency room because you think you broke your arm, the doctor there reads it, but they're an emergency room doctor. They're not a radiologist. What do? They have a radiologist do a second read on it to make sure there's nothing they missed that is there, so they don't commit malpractice.
I know in every film that we make in our clinic, at least Dr. Jensen and I, we get a second opinion from a radiologist. We just do. And it costs a little bit of money, but it might save somebody's life. It might save some malpractice issues, too.
Right. Money well spent.
Money well spent and invested. Talk a little bit about kinesiology. We know that kinesio means energy in motion, like a boulder rolling down a hill, so energy in motion. So we can test a muscle to see if it's weak or strong. And that's quite legitimate, because if I've been involved in an automobile collision and these muscles are too strong, highly rigid, or weak, that's a subjective sign again, but it's telling me that something has been injured there, and then I can validate that through other orthopedic tests as well as x-ray. And some chiropractors and nutritionists use kinesiology to test for vitamins. They say, oh, you need vitamin A or you need vitamin C. And there's a great deal of controversy about that. But from our perspective, at least Dr. Jensen and I, we would rather validate that or revalidate that through blood chemistry tests.
Right.
Because there isn't anything going to be more honest than a blood test to tell me what my calcium level is, or my vitamin D level is, or my PSA, or hormones and things of that nature. So when they get ready in the control room, they're going to run this kind of funny thing about a guy going into he's having some trouble with his car, right?
Right.
And something with his brakes or whatever, and he pulls into this garage, and the guy lays hands on him in his car, and he does kinesiology, and he starts telling him he needs this and that. And I don't know anybody who's doing that with cars, but I've been around long enough to know that somebody would try it.
Well, but the beauty is that most of us would never let us do that to the car we have. But people every day go to chiropractic clinics and let people do it there.
Right,
so,
right.
So it's a good laugh, if nothing else.
It's a good laugh. And we're not accusing anybody using kinesiology
Whenever I
being
stop,
wrong.
the car shakes. Now, a couple of days ago, I was coming down this...
Put your hand here. Brakes. Rotors. Calipers. It's the calipers, it's okay.
Calipers! Don't you want to take out some tools or something?
That's not how we do things here. Don't worry about it.
Roy!
I'm into the Holistic Repair Center, so can we run that again? I think we can explain it even a little bit more.
It's not natural.
It's worth running again. So he's got a car problem. He comes in, he tells this guy he's got some problems, and the guy decides to do kinesiology on him or his car to find out.
Whenever I stop, the car shakes. Now, a couple of days ago, I was coming down this...
Put your hand here. Brakes.
No, calipers, brake
Rotors.
shoes.
Calipers.
It's
the calipers, it's okay.
Calipers.
Calipers! Don't you want to take out some tools or something?
That's not how we do things
It's
here.
really
Don't worry about it.
laughable, but that goes on in a lot of clinics where we're diagnosing purely based on kinesiology.
Right. Yeah, and the beauty of it is, I think in some scenarios, not that you couldn't do that and really feel confident with your car. You might be right, but the kinesiology, again, you may be right, but if there's a better and a more objective way to do it, do that.
I know, and one of the issues that we receive mailings, this one here we were looking at a little while ago, this one here about credibility. This happens to be the chiropractors, but Mr. Bennerat says that attorneys get the mailings too. Here's American's Top Chiropractors 2007, that's $190. American, what is this one here? Chief Chiropractor of the Year. So you can go out and buy these certificates. They really look pretty, don't they? Really first class looking, right? Telling me that the Consumers Research Council of America has named me Chiropractor of the Year. Wow, unbelievable. And so it talks about credibility, again, and finding out about credibility, is you've been in my office and there's one whole wall plastered with diplomas. I've never been in your office, but I assume you have a few of them on the wall too. I know by law we have to have our licenses at least on the wall. And,
Right.
and we see another thing, they're going to get another video up here about supposedly detoxifying people's bodies. And when they get that ready, and certainly a lot of people who are very ill they are toxic. They have toxic bowel syndrome, maybe they got cancer, a liver problem, kidney failure. And this one here says they're going to put some people's feet in water, and they throw some water in a pail, and then they put some salt in there, make it a saline solution, and then they put an electrode in there, and then it starts turning dark, and they see all these poisons are coming out of your body, and this is related to your cancer, or it's part of your liver, gallbladder, or gallstones. And so here we're going to start running that now. And in fact, there's a great deal. They're going to put some salt in this tub here, going to put regular tap water in, and so you're making a saline solution. And so after the tub is filled with water, they're going to do this now. They put this electrode in there, we could call it that, and they're going to run this very low amperage in there, because if it was high, it could really hurt you. And then the theoretical basis is that it's going to take the toxins out of your body. Well, there is no credible scientific evidence that proves that. Now, the people selling this equipment say that they have, but if you go out on the websites, you'll even see Dr. Well, even one who's probably most noted for alternative medical care in the United States, doesn't even believe in it. And they say, well, the discoloration of water going on here is all these toxins coming out of your body. It's not toxins coming out of your body. It's merely the electrolytes changing. That's what's happening in the water. And they say, well, see, even the fat is coming out of your body because the sludge is in the water now. And personally, and I have a right to have an opinion just like anybody else does, I don't believe in that, but there are a lot of people that are getting snookered into these treatments and paying some pretty good money for it too. But I don't know of any credible scientific evidence that proves that that's a legitimate diagnostic test. Mr. Bennerat, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
Well, the one, and I'm sure everybody took this from what you said, but the beauty of it is whether his feet were in the water or not, everything would have been exactly the same.
That's right, because other tests have shown that you can put an electrode in water with salt and it'll still turn the water,
right,
discolor it.
Yeah, I guess about the only difference is the frothy material there is just mainly from, I think we said, the sweat and oils off the feet, but other than that, nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
It didn't take any toxins out of the body.
So if I were a claims adjuster at some insurance company and I would say, well, I question this, and then the chiropractor, nutritionist, or kinesiologist gets all worked up about it, I think they have a legitimate right to get worked up about it.
I don't remember any clients or past, when I was an adjuster, any claimants having treatment like that.
Well, it's coming.
I would
buddy.
get worked up.
It's coming. Wherever there's a buck to be made in America, they're going to do it. What about going to some natural health care practitioner, licensed or not licensed, who pushes food supplements? What does that say to you?
Well, I have my own personal beliefs on it, but I think again, it's kind of like you talked about before. Before you can do it, you have to have some valid reason or a way to be able to suggest to them what the person needs and tell them why. I guess part of it is there's a psychological component to it, but I personally don't have a strong belief in it, so that probably spills into maybe what my answer is.
As it would in anything,
yeah,
and you're being honest about
yeah.
that. And my experience is, after 40-some years of practice, and my closest friend until he died here a couple of years ago was a premier kinesiologist in the world. Dr. John Thie was the first chiropractor to even go to China and brought back all of this acupuncture business and the meridians and all of that. And he taught kinesiology and sold more books on kinesiology than any person has ever throughout the world, written in many different languages, traveled throughout the world. But he still himself, even though he did kinesiology, he still did blood tests to substantiate those tests. And he still did orthopedic workups, physical examinations, still had x-rays of his patients. So he was really a sodbuster, a real pioneer ahead of time. But I know we get letters and mailings from vitamin companies, for example, now, who even have a credit from the various boards of chiropractic examiners In other words, continuing education that you and I have to have every year, and medical doctors and dentists do, of course. And so, and they'll say, well, we have these coaches, and if you'll attend a seminar, he'll tell you how to build a big kinesiology vitamin practice and make all of this money. Well, you and I have overheads to cover every month. We have administrative people. I have x-ray and all of these different lab and things that go on, and researching and things like that, and that's all legitimate. But I question then when somebody says, look, you can make $10,000 more a month or $20,000 more a month if you take this class and learn how to sell more vitamins or minerals. So it really says, well, maybe they might be finding some truth in the muscle testing. I don't doubt that whatsoever. But, or they'll say, well, you have a wheat allergy. Well, when we go and test that person the same day that they tested wheat on kinesiology for wheat, and then we draw their blood within an hour, there was no treatment, mind you now, no supplementation, and the blood comes back and there was no wheat allergy. What does that say to me? And I find, and I don't know how true it is universally, but one who wants to stay educated in the natural health sciences, it's almost every, not every, but almost everyone that has kinesiology testing, they have a gluten allergy or wheat allergy, they have a soy allergy, they have a dairy product allergy, and I can't believe the number of people that they put on what they call liver gallbladder flushes. They say, well, it's all in your liver, you got to be detoxified. Then you've got to put your feet in this pail of water and we have to detoxify you too. And I'm saying, well, there might be some scientific validity to that, and you can throw all kinds of literature at us to prove the validity, but what I want to do then is see a baseline test to say, well, if they do in fact need that vitamin A or that vitamin D, what does their blood say they need?
Well, and maybe the later test to show what effect it had.
Okay. What about some other red flags? Now, I've been in your office twice. Once we had a meeting, a short meeting, and the other time I dropped off some DVDs. That was, I just in and out. What does it, and so I've seen a couple administrative, I assume they're administrative people, and it gave me an impression of that. What about doctors, employees? Now, hospitals, I mean, that's just a major mill, or you go into some great big gigantic clinic, you know, it's just a lot of employees. What are you looking for when you walk into a medical doctor's clinic or a chiropractic clinic when you're looking at staff?
Well, I think you look at a lot of things, but I mean, I think probably we all kind of look at different things. But I mean, again, it goes back to what we talked about in part one, at least from my perspective. Part of it's the comfort you have when you walk in. You know, it's the old rule I think you use is you only get one chance to make a first impression. Your first impression is probably one when you walk in, you know, and it starts probably when you pull up in the parking lot, frankly. But you know, you look at the staff, you look at how friendly they are, much like when you go buy anything. But I think it's the cleanliness, it's the how up to date is everything, how friendly is everybody, how promptly are you taken back and given your treatment, how professionally is that done? Do they explain what they're doing? You know, before you provide the treatment, you know, if I've never had it before, I don't even really know maybe what they're doing. Do they explain to me so I understand what's going to be done and why? Maybe what benefit I should derive from it. I mean, I guess those are the things to me that when I think about importance, probably especially the explanation where, you know, do I even know why they're doing this, and, you know, how often are they going to want me to come, those sorts of things.
Way back in the 1960s when I took my first risk management course, they always said, inform before you perform, as you perform, and after you perform. And we've tried to have that motto all through all these years, and there's a lot of different ways to do it now, of course, with all of the videos and high-tech things that we can have. But people have a right to be told, and so when we're pushy, anytime we're around a doctor, unless it's an emergency situation, if somebody's laying out in the street and they've been in a car accident, I'm not going to, and they're semi-conscious, I'm not going to ask them if I can stop this bleeding. You know, I'm not going to bother asking. Right. You know, but so it becomes important. Another thing then that I wanted to ask you about is there's a thing called an advanced beneficiary notice. Now, I don't involve that in our clinic. Our staff does that. What does advanced beneficiary notice mean?
Well, we haven't talked about that before. I presume, at least the way I would interpret that to mean, and you correct me if you're thinking something different than I am, but I would assume that if somebody can't give the consent to whatever needs to be done, that you have somebody in place beforehand so that they can make the decision for that person.
Yeah, what that means, and the clinic manager at our clinic put it out here for me because I know about that, but I never have anything to do with it. And she wrote down here, and she took this from federal statutes.
Okay.
A properly executed ABN or advanced beneficiary notice acknowledges coverage in uncertain or yet to be determined and stipulates that the patient promises to pay the bill if Medicare does not.
Okay.
Patients who are not notified before they receive such services are not responsible for payment.
Okay. Well,
That's
yeah,
the federal government.
Okay, it's in a little different setting than I was
so-
thinking too. So you're basically saying that.
No, I'm the government saying this, all right? Go ahead.
Yeah. But I mean, if they sign it, I mean, it's essentially that whatever services provide, they agree to pay for it if somebody else doesn't. I was looking at it in a different context. So.
Well, yeah, we're thinking about HIPAA
Right,
and all of
right,
those
right,
things,
right.
but again, if all the federal government on any Medicare or any federal program where they're paying for health care services, they require an ABN. If you are not,
Yeah.
if your doctor's office hasn't required you to sign that, and the Medicare or Medicaid or some federal program that you're involved in, and they refuse to pay it, you do not have to pay that bill. You do not have to pay that bill.
I was so enthralled with talking to you, I kind of missed our cue a little bit, and we shifted topics, so I missed it. But yeah, I mean, it's what everybody does. It's even when you go to the dentist's office, when you go to the doctor's office. It's why they, over the past few years, when the law changed, that there's a clipboard out there for everybody where they said, here, take this and sign it. You don't have to.
No.
But if you don't, they don't have to treat you.
That's right. How about, we should give them the special fraud alert if you're concerned about fraud. You can, it's www.hhs.gov/OIG/FRDALART/index. They've got it up there for you, .htm. So that's where all the federal rules and regulations are. And even the risk management seminars that Dr. Jensen and I teach, most of the doctors aren't even aware of this thing. So let's talk about billing services. We are approached in our clinic quite frequently by companies that want to do our billing, and they say that's all we have to do is give them the CPT and codes and diagnostic and treatment codes that are applicable, and we then send that electronically to them, and they do the billing.
Right.
Nothing illegal about that? Are
Nope.
there any concerns of the patient about that?
Well, a little bit. Maybe a concern for the patient and the provider with the services, because I suppose if you're not the one actually putting the billing information in, you can't assure the accuracy of. But I mean, there's a lot of facilities that do that. I think it probably depends on the facility, and depends on how sophisticated you are and whether or not you have the ability to be able to do that.
I know the federal government is quite concerned about this because everyone has federal ID numbers, right? Small business people?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a sole proprietor, you technically don't have to, but most businesses, I mean, my law firm does, your office does.
So when we bill anything to an insurance company, it has to have this federal ID number on that insurance form.
Correct.
Well, what the government has concern with is that when this doctor's office, this chiropractor's office, uses a billing service, that when they do the billing for the doctor, that they're using a different ID number than the doctor. The other concern that the government has is that when a check is paid by the insurance company or by the government, and it goes into the billing service's checking account, and they have another concern that it's called bundling again,
Right.
where the insurance company goes, or the billing service, not the insurance company, goes and loads up specials on the bills. In other words, instead of saying they just had a spinal adjustment for, say, $50, they say they start charging per vertebra.
Right.
When the doctor didn't send it over that way. Now, there's nothing wrong with charging cervical, thoracic, lumbar, or whatever.
Right.
Nothing illegal about that whatsoever. But when we start to add services on so that the billing company makes the bill bigger,
Sure.
therefore they make more money,
Right.
and the doctor makes more money.
Right. Well, and the reason they make more money, depending on the facility, I think normally most of those billing services get paid on a percentage basis. Therefore, they have a conflict per se, because the more they bill, the more they earn.
Another thing I noticed that they brought to my attention with another red flag was physicians who use abbreviations. symbols or emblems of Social Security Administration. That's like using these certificates that I'm the chiropractor of the year this year. And I am in my own office because, I'm the alpha dog, like I'm really not. The people who run the clinic are the alpha dogs, But physicians who use abbreviations, symbols, or emblems of Social Security Administration or the Healthcare Financing Administration, Department of Health Services, or Medicare or Medicaid. So you can put anything on a wall, and it doesn't necessarily be true. Now, how about dealing with recognized authorities, say about automobile accident telephones and things like that?
Well, if you get in a car crash, are you saying, what should I do, kind of,
That's
almost?
right. Mm-hmm.
All right, well, there's a couple things. I mean, we've talked about these in great detail, I think, in our first program that we did on no fault. But, I mean, you want to know what rights you have, and you want to make sure that you get to a medical provider who cares about you, not just about making money, but about helping you get better. You want to get to an attorney who cares about you, again, not just making money, but helping you work through, get better, get your bills paid, get compensated for what you have rights to get compensated for. In the big scheme of things, really, what I tell people is, if I can get them a fair and prompt resolution, I've done what I feel I need to do and what I've set out to do.
I know, going back to radiology, this came to my mind. I was listening to an interview with a radiologist, and they were discussing mammograms. And they said the highest percentage of malpractice suits filed against radiologists has to do, and he said 35% of all malpractice claims against radiologists involves misdiagnosis of mammograms. And they were stressing, and they're saying, well, just don't rely on the mammogram, have an ultrasound or an MRI, and these are issues that we're going to talk about in some of our hormone shows that we're going to be doing in the near future. But again, it goes back to second opinion. And I admit that is the thousands upon thousands of x-rays that I've read in 40-some years of practice, almost always on every radiology report that comes back, I learned something new, something that the radiologist saw in a different reflection than I did. And so I think it's so important for me, as well as the patient, to not only be x-rayed if they've had an injury, rather than just testing kinesiology, for example. I mean, it's a valid point, kinesiology. Right. We're not against that in any way. And then to have a second opinion. So, for example, with attorneys must get second opinions in your office or something like that. If you have a question on a file, you're asking somebody, what do you think about this? Or? Absolutely,
because just like in medicine, law isn't an exact science either. Sometimes there's an exact answer, but not always. And if there's a question that, you're better off to go to a colleague, see if they agree, and at least talk about it to determine that.
So what it really amounts to is you need to get second opinions, try and deal with an honorable male or female practitioner or attorney. My goal is that when I get in the car to drive home every night, and some of our days are really long days in the clinic, and because there's a lot of people that want to be seen and we want to take our time with them. My goal is that I can sleep good that night, that I tried to look at every patient as if they were Jesus Christ. That's really my goal. Now, if they want to believe just because some doctor says that he's a Christian or a Muslim or whatever, Baha'i faith or whatever, and I have no problem with that, that's their choice. But again, just because I have a Bible in my reception room doesn't mean that I'm a godly man. I have to look at it and say, if you were Jesus, if you were Muhammad, if you were Allah or whoever, would you be taken care of? Would I, as a doctor, then give you the best possible care, make at least the best possible recommendations? And that has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with philosophy. We're not trying to evangelize you. We don't use this program to evangelize anybody. You're adults. You can make up your own mind. And if you think different than us, that's fine. It's America. It's a democracy, right? It's wonderful we have this democracy. So try to deal with honorable, upright, righteous people in the health industry as well as legal profession, and you'll do yourself very well. You really will. We'll see you on the next show.
House Call TV has been brought to you by the Fellowship of the Great Physician. For further information, please call at 651-484-8255 8521 or visit our website at www.housecalltv.org. Until next time, thank you for listening to House Call.